It's Wednesday, August 20th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. As firefighters continue to battle wildfires in this province, today we are talking first responders and mental health. What folks face, how they process it, what help is available, what else is needed. Interference from my headphones there, so I'm just gonna get that squared away. If you got thoughts on today's conversation, right, on first responders and mental health, you can text us 709-327-8206 or email us at thesignal@cbc.ca. We've got three folks in studio. We've got someone on the line. Also, we're going to make a couple calls to people in other parts of the country for today's conversation. So I'll do a whip around for the hellos, and then we'll dive right into it. Sarah White, Lifewise Provincial Operations Manager. Thanks for coming back on the show. Nice to see you again. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Give folks just a, I think people, it used to be Channel, now Lifewise. I think people get that. But just give us a quick introduction on the First Responders Warm Line.
Absolutely. So at Lifewise, we have the privilege of hosting the First Responders Warm Line, and that is actually open 365 days a year from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. and is fully staffed by folks who were first responders, who have received peer support training through Lifewise, as well as assist, mental health first aid, and a variety of other trainings. The First Responders Warm Line is completely confidential. We don't need to know any identifying information, where you are, who you are, even what type of first responder you are. The goal is to have folks be able to connect with somebody else who truly was there, truly does get it, truly did experience the life-changing impacts of being a first responder, and just provides empathetic, non-judgmental ear for folks to be able to listen. If anybody is interested in reaching out to the First Responders Warm Line, it is 1709-237-4180, and again, it's 7 days a week. Excellent.
Thank you for that. RNC Sgt. Ed Benoit is here. Thanks for coming in. Tell us just a little about yourself. 20 years on the force, is it?
Creeping into 20 years
Creeping
now.
into 20.
Creeping in, very close, within a week.
Okay, well, hey, congrats on that.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. So I have a little background about myself. Yeah. I've spent, I guess, the better part of 20 years kind of bouncing all around the RNC, doing different things. Back around 2018, I believe it was, I joined with the Mobile Crisis Response Team, which was the joint effort between the RNC and Health Services to offer health services throughout the Northeast Avalon at the time. Since that time, I've moved into a couple of different roles. Started off first with the Employee Assistance Program liaison for the RNC to help members kind of assess services and attain those. That would also jump into assisting with critical incident debriefings on the job, which, long story short, kind of morphed into a unofficial peer support program. And now we're kind of trying to formalize that in the last couple of years. We've added a new role at our organization with a clinical director of psychological services. We have an on-site psychologist. They've overseen now developing policies and procedures and trying to kind of formalize this new peer support and how it's going to look.
How does that feel to be part of that? I mean, that's a big deal.
Great. I mean, we have a lot of good people that work on the front lines, behind the scenes. It's not just solely uniformed services. I mean, we have a lot of civilian members that work in our organization as well that don't often get put in the spotlight, but certainly go through a lot of the same stressors, whether it be taking the calls through 911, whether it be reading files, transcribing interviews. I mean, there's a lot of trauma, unfortunately, that when any of us kind of sign up, there's certainly an inherent risk for us to be exposed to that. But we certainly need to recognize that the damage that those exposures can have kind of long term, what they can lead into. So it's obviously really good to be a part of trying to help those that are helping others.
Right. Yeah. All right. And there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot there that we can through this show we'll start to dig into. Just next to you here, we've got Rodney Gaudet is here, president of the Paramedic Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming in. So tell us a bit about yourself and you too. Is it 2 decades at it now?
Yeah, creeping up onto it as well. Yeah, right. Not till next year, not next week. But
okay,
next
so
year,
next year, not next week. Got it.
Yeah. Yes, I've been a paramedic for coming on 20 years now. I've worked in Prince Edward Island, where I'm originally from. Moved to Newfoundland in 2010. I've worked on the ground ambulance, the air ambulance, and teaching at the college. So I've done a lot of different aspects of it. But with the Paramedic Association, I became the president in 2017. And the Paramedic Association, we're the advocacy group, the professional association, so advocating for change. And we've had a lot of focus on the mental health aspects. So pushing for the first responder warm line, having conversations and working groups when that was being created. We've done a lot of training across the province with our paramedics for the Road to Mental Readiness, which is now the Working Mind First Responder Edition. And that was a cooperation with the provincial government that we were able to do that. And so we're constantly always pushing for more improvements in the mental health aspect for our members.
How much have you seen changed in 19 years and change?
Yeah, lots of change, lots of positive change, I should say. Years ago, it was kind of that mentality that, if you were emotional after a call or cried or whatever, then people kind of viewed it as, oh, you weren't strong enough for this type of job and maybe you should look at something else. But thankfully, that mentality is and has changed quite a bit. We're all human. If I have a difficult call tomorrow and if I want to cry or if I want to be emotional, then that's perfectly acceptable. So.
Yeah, like I remember a time just on the military side when I was in the reserves back, so we're talking early 2000s. The advice back then, if like you have a stressful week, maybe we'd be sailing into Seattle, and the advice would be go in, have a bunch of drinks, blow your head off for the weekend, and you'll be great for when we sail on Monday. Not healthy. And I know that's not what it is now. Like I'm dating myself by saying this, but and we can, again, through the conversation, kind of talk a bit about what's been brought in and the progress and how things are so okay to cry, right? Mm-hmm. Okay to reach out for peer support, to call a warm line, to acknowledge the impacts of what these things do to us. Right? It's massively important. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
On the line, we've got Duane Antle, president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of Fire Services, fire chief at the Comanchance Fire Department. Chief Antle, thank you for coming back on the program.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having us.
You've, on top of all of your firefighter, fire chief duties, you've also worked with something called SISM, and you are deeply involved with the mental health and well-being of folks of firefighters and folks connected to them. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you got into that and that journey for yourself?
Well, I think, the road that led us there would be very similar to what Rodney just said. We see things, we do things. We were given a bottle and said, here, this is how you deal with that. You'll be okay. And I think enough of us had those experiences that we were able to say, you know what, this is not how we should be doing things. Our members give up so much to serve us. We need to be serving them. So in 2015, we decided to give it a try and see if we could start a program to have peer responders right around the province who could help, somebody when they've had a traumatic call. So it started off with a small donation, and we went from there, and now, thankfully we do have trained peer supporters all around the province. Still have some work to do. There are some areas where we haven't been able to get in there as much as we want to. But we're continuously working on that, and I guess it's always going to be a work in progress, because of course people retire, people move, people's situation changes, and so on and so forth. So it's a continuous journey, I guess. But the changes that we've seen since we've started down this road have just been amazing. And there were fire departments who kind of paved the way for us, like, Grand Falls, Gander, people who recognized that this was a need, and they had programs in place for themselves, which give us some great guidance. So, yeah, there's been a lot of changes.
Chief Antle, when you look at the weeks like we've just had and the firefighters who are still fighting these wildfires, where do your thoughts go when it comes to a mental health lens to look at this and to think of the campaign firefighting that is happening and some of the help that will be needed?
Trying to understand what they've seen, what they've what they've had to do, and the only way to do that is be there talking to them, and hearing their stories, and of course we have some really good mental health professionals who help us and guide us and tell us what to look for, help us understand why we're getting a particular answer, what that could mean to us, and how we should respond to it. But, one of the biggest things for me is thinking about the families.
Right.
Like, these guys, they're giving up their paychecks, they're giving up time with their family, and they're seeing all these terrible things happening around them. So not only do they have something difficult to process, but they're not at home with their support system to process it. The other thing that I think we really need to be paying attention to after this are the families. Like, I sat down with one firefighter, and it was an amazing story. He's out on the end of a line trying to save somebody's house, and his house burns. Like, man, how do you recover from that easily? You don't. And his wife, while he was on the end of a line somewhere, or driving a fire truck, or doing whatever it was he had to do at that particular time, when she got the notice that they had to evacuate, she had to do it all herself. Like, her husband couldn't help her. He didn't even know she was loading the car up. He was doing his job. So imagine what all of these first responders' families have been through over the past couple of weeks.
So, Chief, and that's a hard thing for folk to wrap your head around, that type of an impact for a family. And we're talking today. We've got we talk about the warm lines, we talk about some of the help that's available. And I don't know the answer to this question, and I'm just wondering what you're like when it comes to that firefighter and that family and mental health supports. Not today, tomorrow, next week, but 5 years from now, 7 years from now, what are the supports for firefighters and first responders long term in this province if the time comes when someone needs PTSD support, substance addictions support? Is there anything for you folks now?
There are programs. Like, for example, my fire department has an insurance program, and it does provide support for PTSD and long-term care. Hopefully, things like the warm line, like, they're awesome tools, because you know what, maybe I've heard something today that's bothering me, and I can pick up that line, that phone, and I can call that line, and immediately I'm debriefing myself. I'm getting help. So we need to keep supporting that, and if anything, I think pushing for more resources for the warm line. I think bringing the problem to the forefront, having people who can make those decisions more aware of what we need for first responders. I think that's critical for us to continue doing, because that's how we're going to get more programming in place. But in 5 to 7 years, seeing what we're seeing, I think we're going to need to take a real hard look at the services that are available, the boots on the ground service, and say, you know what, we need to make this bigger.
Folks in studio, any thoughts on what the chief is saying there?
I just want to kind of echo what Duane said, is something that we've heard from a lot of first responders as well, that we do expect to see more folks reaching out in the coming weeks, more than now in the moment.
Yeah.
People are in the moment. They are actively fighting these wildfires. They are losing homes. Families are losing homes. We know through our partners with NLHS that, when they've gone in to provide some mental health supports, the first responders are very much like, nope, not now. And they'll walk away, and they're like, we're in the middle of this. We need to focus on this. So I do think it is crucial that we have additional support as this ends, in the weeks and the months, even the years to come, because that's when folks are going to have time to process everything they've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add upon that, I mean, we are certainly, with the wildfires, it's pretty much an unprecedented time. I mean, I'm sure we can all remember forest fires to some degree. I don't know how many conversations I've heard or been a part of over the last couple of weeks where people have reiterated that, this is new, that we've never had to go about this, just from the province having to, I guess, allocate different resources to come in to assist. So you look at the first responders that are actually helping with suppression efforts, selfless acts that they have been doing. I know I was part of the evacuation order that went out, and we had members that were there from municipalities, from, we'll say, the Rover Search and Rescue, that had properties, that had family, that were out in the Kingston area, and they were here trying to assist with this local issue. So again, selfless acts that no doubt down the road there's going to be a need for additional supports.
Yeah. Rodney, thoughts?
Yeah, and I think just, obviously here we're talking about the first responders today, but like Duane has mentioned as well, I mean, the families, like I've heard from people that, their kids are anxious and worried about, these fires. They're hearing about it on the news. They're hearing about people having to evacuate. They're talking to their parents about, like, well, what if we have to evacuate? What about our dog? What about our cat? So they're anxious, and they're having essentially mental health issues related to these wildfires, even though they're not directly, involved with the fires. Just hearing it. So anybody in the province really could be affected and have, lasting effects from this as well. So.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we were talking mental health last week on the show with registered psychologist Janine Hubbard too. And the thing, in the show we did last week. So again, this discussion about families and folks and these layers of impact. Janine was in here and was on alert, so she brought her dog, and her dog was here too because she couldn't leave her dog home just in case stuff got worse. So this is what we're seeing right now, that through this summer, and then folks like yourselves on the front lines dealing with it, answering these calls, and then trying to process. Right. Joining us on the line now, we've got Amy Green, a psychologist in Salmon Arm, British Columbia. Amy, thank you for coming on the program.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So we got in touch with you because so what we do sometimes when we do these shows is we hit the Google button for Canada and we see who's done what across the country. Because what I like to do on this show is I like to have the local perspective, like you've just been hearing, and then we like to reach out to different parts of the country that could help us with context. And you wrote an article about treating and facing anxiety from climate wildfires. When you've been watching the news this summer about what's happening across Canada and here in Newfoundland and Labrador for this specific show today, where's your mind for thoughts on everything?
Oh, of course. I mean, my heart's been going out to you all on the East Coast. I've been watching the weather, hoping for rain for you all. I mean, I have so much empathy. We're no strangers to forest fires here in Salmon Arm, and we've been through it. We're having a great season this year, to be honest. So now my anxiety just is going to the rest of the country and watching what's going on. So absolutely, my heart's going out to everybody who's first responders, people who've been evacuated, lost their homes. I mean, the grief and the trauma is immense. There's no words, truly. Yeah.
You work with first responders as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to some of the trauma and help that is needed, what are some thoughts you have around from the short term? And we were just talking about having a peer support warm line and what that provides. Mm-hmm. But from the short term to the long term, what types of things are needed?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm loving hearing some of these programs that are available, these warm lines and peer support groups. This is awesome that these things are available, and I hope that first responders are using them and know that, these things they're going through are immense and normal, and support is needed. So, there's kind of two phases in the trauma. When you're in that acute phase, when you're in the fire and you're fighting it and you're in it, you're going to be just trying to do what you can in that moment to regulate your nervous system. I always say kind of back to the basics, focusing on drinking water, getting food, getting some support, some peer support, having a laugh, having some dark humor. These things are going to get you through the acute phase. I think there was some talk about, first responders can be really good at putting their own stuff aside and responding to what needs to be done. I hear this all the time from the first responders I work with. They're really good at jumping in and helping and, pushing their own stuff to the side. That makes them really good at what they do, but it can be really difficult long term. So I often talk about with my clients the difference between a containment. Sometimes you need to contain your trauma and put it aside to just deal with what needs to be done in the moment. But when that's done for a long period of time, maybe after the fire's over, we're thinking weeks or months afterwards, that can get really problematic because that trauma can live in your body. It can start coming out in ways that are maybe less helpful. That's when we start to maybe see things like nightmares or flashbacks or even longer term things like depression, low mood, fatigue, challenges with cognitive things like concentration. So when we start to see those things more long-term happening, we want to hopefully get some more support. I think PTSD was mentioned, so sometimes trauma processing therapy to help with some of those longer-term symptoms.
Some of the reading I've done for the show today, and just from personal experiences and living life, when it comes to first responders, there are times when folks don't want to take someone else's spot, when they think, no, there's someone who might need more help than me. This is something that I think runs through no matter what type of first responder you are, that is there, because when you have selfless people who are doing these things, they're also the first ones to be like, no, there's someone else needs more help. So talk to me a little bit about that, and then how to whether it's a reminder or ways to kind of get through to folks. It's like, well, you're important too, and your help it's needed.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. I mean, I think if we can put some of that guilt aside, I think everyone's deserving of support. And I think families were mentioned today too. Like maybe it's helpful for those responders to think I'm doing this for myself, but also for my family so that I can show up for them and maybe their family's getting support as well. So, I mean, absolutely. I think there's a tendency to think others need it more than me, but I think everyone's deserving of support, especially with what is going on right now with folks in Newfoundland. I mean, there's a collective sense of trauma going on right now. So hopefully knowing that you are deserving of that support.
Where do things need to go, do you think, in this country still? Like, or whether it's gaps or whether it's stigma or anything else, or for shored up mental health supports? Like, what are some things that you think need to kind of be improved still?
Yeah, certainly stigma. I think knowing that it's not a sign of weakness to be seeking support, or it's a sign of strength because it's going to make you more resilient in yourself. And I think at the same time, we talk about hoping that first responders or individuals, reach out for support, but we also need to make it available and easy and accessible for folks so that they're able to do that. We have to give them the means so that people are able to actually access these supports. So, I mean, there's more and more, like has been talked about today, there's more and more services available. There's more and more awareness of the need for these things. So I think we're moving in the right direction. It's just continuing on that path.
Yeah, staying on top of it, talking about it, and if we see the gaps, if there are issues, to make sure that they are known and spread out and talked about in communities and provinces and across the country.
Absolutely.
Anything else before I let you go?
I would just say I'm so grateful and in awe of the work that these first responders are doing. I mean, I personally like to run away from fires, not towards them. So I have all flight, no fight when it comes to these things. I just am so grateful. I know folks across the country are so grateful as well. So I'm thinking of you all, and thank you so much for having me.
Amy Green, thank you so much for, it's still half early on the West Coast, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much.
All right, Amy Green there, a psychologist, Salmon Arm, British Columbia, weighing in. We got in touch with Amy. I'll go to the studio, then back to the line with Duane, but first in the studio, folks who I can see in front of me. Did anything of what Amy was saying speak to either of you?
Well, just she made the comment about, those are the things I run away from.
Yeah.
And no doubt when it comes to first response, the stigma has been very real. Again, it's changed dramatically over the years, but it still does exist. And of course, there is a fear that it's a sign of weakness, that you're letting your peers down by kind of showing this vulnerability because something has impacted you. A lot of people would say, this is what you signed up for. This is what you should expect. And to a certain degree, yes, it is. However, regardless of the training or the education that we've received, you can't predict how your body is going to react under certain stressors, and stress can certainly take many different forms. So, I think that's something that, again, just knowing what the exposure can do and the impacts that it can have.
Yeah, and there's no brochure out there that really kind of conveys what you're going to get into if you're a police officer, if you're a paramedic, if you're a firefighter. It's only the lived experience. And then, like you just said, and then you find out how your body reacts to it.
And I mean, I think with a lot of that stuff, education is key for any of that. And as of right now, it's so much in the forefront. Just, the symptomology of what stress can do, the impacts that it can have, the recovery. I know, just speaking from personal experience, when the mental health side of things in the community, for the most part, should we respond to it, most cases we see people at their worst in an absolute crisis.
Yeah.
Very rarely do we get to see the recovery side of things.
Yeah.
So just having people know that with illness there is recovery. People can lead very successful and meaningful lives.
That's the other bit too that I think about a lot. Like, for your jobs, you're not seeing people on, like, for my job, I can oftentimes see people on great days, right? Monday we did a Canada game show, and it was a tonic. Let me tell you, talking to young athletes. But when you get a paramedic call, it's someone in distress, and knowing that this is like learning to process that must take a bit. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, for us, sorry, I find that, you go respond to these calls, you pick them up, you take them to the hospital. We typically don't find out what happens afterwards, kind of thing. We leave them in the emergency department or wherever they need to go. And in my head, I like to always assume that everybody gets better, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't know. I mean, patient confidentiality, so we can't find out afterwards. So that can be a toll on people as well, because they're always wondering, like, what happened to that person? What happened to that person? Maybe here on the news, there's car accident, the patient ended up dying in hospital. So you end up finding out sometimes, but most of the time we don't really find out. You don't see that, like you said, that recovery side, and especially with the mental health aspects of things. We don't see that unless we respond to that individual again for another time.
Joining us on the line now, we've got Scott Maxwell, CEO, Wounded Warriors Canada. Scott, thank you for coming on the program.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Tell folks about Wounded Warriors Canada.
We're a national mental health service provider that supports who we call trauma-exposed organizations, trauma-exposed professionals, veterans, first responders, and their families through resiliency programming and recovery programming.
What's prevention like, and how do you talk to folks about it?
Well, that's just it. I mean, this is kind of where we're at in the space of mental health care in Canada is on the prevention and early intervention side of things. That's where all of our programming, be it the upstream resiliency training programs, are focused, and even the downstream, the clinical counseling group interventions that we provide. We just have a mantra that we're trying to get these professions to move a little bit from trauma-informed to trauma-skilled. And this takes work, it takes practice, it takes investment, but we see all the time the good news of what happens when someone puts that hand up or takes that knee a lot earlier in their operational careers from what we had seen, let's say, supporting ill and injured veterans from our inception back in 2013. So we're moving markers. We've got a long way to go, but so much of this is education, advocacy, and investment.
So you're talking when you started, you were helping veterans post Afghanistan process and where things were, and now in this country we look at from the police to the paramedics and still veterans, and then firefighters from structure fires and wildfires, like we're talking now. You're across the country. Have you been in touch with folks from? You've been in touch with the folks from Newfoundland and Labrador before?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, we have tons of partnerships across the province. Just recently talking to the Provincial Emergency Operations Center folks about offering some assistance wherever they feel they could need it now or in the shorter, medium, long term from now through our Strength Warrior resiliency program. These are early intervention and prevention training, psychoeducational training services that we have and deliver nationally. We've obviously offered these things into situations like you're experiencing in the province right now with wildfires. Just consistent with what we're doing all across the country to help get people the skills and the tools and the knowledge that we know they need when they're dealing with traumatic event exposure situations and stressful situations like any sort of wildfire is, to ensure that they can begin to think and look at and talk about this stuff now, not in months or years later when sometimes these things can form a cumulative effect long term. And ultimately, as we know, it can take people down and off the job.
Yeah, because that's what I was about to ask, and you've led me right into it. It's that fork in the road. So tell me, with the early help, where that fork goes, and then paint a little bit more on where it goes without it, and keeping in mind the family dynamic too, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So what we see, for example, when we were mainly dealing with ill and injured veterans starting out, most had been medically released from the Canadian Forces, i.e. they weren't going back to work. They weren't going to stay in those professions. It was good. We were helping them in the recovery transition to civilian life stage, but it's very different from what we're finally starting to see within the first responder public safety community, where the vast majority of our participants in our programming on the counseling side are still actively employed. And we attribute and see a lot of this, not for everybody, but for many, is that a lot of that journey for them to put their hand up and access clinical services in the community or through us started because they learned the skills and the tools and the prevention things that we know that they need to have these jobs earlier or at some point in their operational roles, or even through an event. So what that means is they can start to do 226 challenges, to the check-ins on themselves, 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months. If they're still thinking about what they've been through or that call or the event, they have this understanding that that's okay. This can be a natural physiological response to traumatic event exposure, but it's also a skill to say, okay, now I need to maybe do a bit more work. You have to do work to do this and to help themselves, but we just see more and more people prepared to do it, and that's fantastic.
So before I let you go, Scott, as this continues to get brought in, baked in, hopefully, for first responders, what else do we need in Canada to be helping folks and to have the help available?
Yeah, you mentioned the family component. I mean, they're really so far excluded from any of this in terms of education, training, resiliency type understanding, just understanding the uniqueness of these professions, even though they are spouses and partners and children to these folks. But we got a long way to go to really provide and make sure that they're receiving equal and obviously specific, but equal level of tools and skills that we know they need, and they come and seeking that help from us all the time. And I think overall, just more of an understanding that you have to train early, you have to train often. We spend so much time and money as a country training these folks for the operational realities of these jobs, how to use the tools, and we use the vehicles and put out the fires and do all of this. But we've just simply not prioritized the psychological health and safety aspect of this work, and that needs to pair to the operational realities facing trauma-exposed professionals. That takes national, provincial, regional, municipal commitment and investment to do so.
Scott Maxwell, I appreciate your time on this. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Folks, Scott Maxwell, CEO, Wounded Warriors Canada. You are listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about first responders and mental health. Here with me in studio, we have Sarah White, Lifewise Provincial Operations Manager, Rodney Gaudet, President of the Paramedic Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, RNC Sgt. Ed Benoit is with us as well in studio, and on the line, Duane Antle, President of the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of Fire Services, Fire Chief at the Come By Chance Fire Department. Chief Antle, any thoughts on what Scott was saying, or Amy Green, or anything else you've been hearing so far?
I think one of the things that really stands out to me is we're all going down that same road. There was a time when Ed could tell you where. Just one second.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so folks, we've got Duane Antle here on the line, Fire Chief for Come By Chance Fire Department. Also works with CISM. Massively involved with mental health and first responders and firefighters. Duane, you were saying?
Yeah, like 10 years ago, if we went to an accident scene, we'd meet with the police officers. It was, you need to do this, we need to do that. And that was, it was an operational conversation, and that was where it stayed. Now you do see a big difference. You go on the scene, and, a police officer will walk up and say, "So how are you guys?
Right.
How are you doing? We know we can't let you go in there right now. We know this is hard for you to have to sit and wait." Like, we're talking openly about our mental health in with different organizations. Looking at Rodney's comments about with the paramedics, that one is a little different too. Now, I know that they have support when they get back to their base and all that nice stuff. and Rodney being a fire chief can tell you there is a big difference going out with a fire department as opposed to the paramedic role. If we go out as a fire department, we have a number of people with us. So if things are tough and you see somebody is, they're changing a little bit, they're having some issue here, we can swap out, and take them out of that situation. When Rodney rolls up, it's him and his partner. And if things get tough, man, switching out is a lot more difficult. Not saying it can't be done, but they have an additional challenge. So looking at each other's role, like a police officer is quite often by themselves, until help arrives. So how do we take all that into account when we're developing our programs? I think that's an area that probably we have to look at a little more closer.
Yeah, the dynamics of what each job brings with it. So, Rodney, anything to add on what or thoughts on what Duane's saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors, I guess, to take into.
Yeah.
What type of call it is and what kind of response it is. Like I said, a lot of times there is all different agencies there working collaboratively together. There has been quite a change in the kind of openness of talking about more mental health stuff. And also like working together after the fact as well, that if there is a difficult call, debriefing together so we get together and discuss about that call. So there has been quite a bit of improvements in that regard as well. So.
Yeah, and Sergeant, I saw you nod a couple times when the chief was talking. Just your thoughts from the RNC angle, and like you said about being alone sometimes too, which I honestly coming into this today wasn't part of my thoughts really until Chief Antle just mentioned it.
He makes some valid points. There's no doubt. I mean, we all bring different experiences in,
yeah,
and we all have different roles to play. I think here in the metro area, we might have the luxury of having a few more resources than we'll say those responding rurally.
Yeah,
but a lot of times you can find yourself there solo. And, we certainly would rely on other professionals there on the scene. As Rodney had mentioned, when it comes to, we'll say, the bigger incidents that we kind of identify and we roll out with like a support session as a group, oftentimes we do extend to the other first responders. And there's a lot to be said. I mean, we share these traumas as they come up. You'd mentioned earlier about confidentiality, that you don't typically find out what happens after the fact. That's certainly a barrier for us as well, which makes peer support in this profession so important, because most times you can't go and rely on a significant other or a family member or a friend to talk about things because they don't have those experiences. For one, you certainly wouldn't want to traumatize them in any way by, divulging any details. And we're also bound by confidentiality.
Right. So, yeah. Doubly hard, right? Like I'm not allowed to talk about it legally, and also if I do,
I don't want to harm you.
I don't want you to.
Sure.
And folks often, so the folks who I would know in the military would always talk about their spouses and stuff, and just be like they just don't understand because they're not there. Mm-hmm. Even for the non-traumatic stuff, like just they're not doing the training, they're not doing the talking afterwards, and for what they go through, and that could also, in an unhealthy way, be a wedge in a family too, if you were not careful.
For sure, and it's all interconnected. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human. So aside from the professional experiences that we go through, we also have regular everyday stressors, marital, relationship, finances, what have you. Mm-hmm. So
you're trying to pay taxes, and you're like, what do you mean the mill rate went up? Totally.
And they're all interconnected. One certainly plays into the other, back and forth.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a lot to take into consideration.
Yeah, Sarah, any thoughts on just what's kind of coming out here from the Lifewise angle, from the warm line, or just from what you've heard from others, as you folks have kind of tooled this thing up and created it too?
Absolutely. We hear a lot of similar things that have been discussed around this table, specifically when it comes to the relationships and the families, and how having to bring some of the weight from the work home with you, sometimes talking about not wanting to traumatize your family members with the things that you've seen. And that's where the first responders warm line comes in handy. It doesn't have to be a debrief. It doesn't have to be a critical incident. It can literally be, I was working a 12-hour shift. I didn't get a chance to get a bite to eat. I have to go home. The kids are still going to be awake. I really want to spend my time with the kids, but I am exhausted. And just having someone who can say, yeah, I remember that. Like that. This is what I would try and do. And just listen and validate those experiences so that when you go home, all of that is off your chest. will help you develop a plan, or like, what do you think you're going to do later for yourself? Think about some self-care for yourself. And then you have someone to speak to about all of that who really does get it. So when you go home, all that's lifted from you. You have a plan for, how you're going to tackle, being a family person now, and children and pets and household duties. That is always going to be there as well. And not having to lean on your partner or your significant other for that. So the First Response Worm Line is there just for that too. So as Dr. Amy said, if you're not going to call for yourself, which is really hard to do for the folks who run in when the rest of us run out, call for your family.
Right. Yep. Yeah, as things progress. For the veterans, almost 20 years here, and also Chief Antle on the line, who's got, I think, a couple more years than 20 years logged in from last I was counting, talking to him. When the younger folks now, so for example, for journalism, one time I was at a thing out, and I got back, and it was difficult. And Cecil Hare was here, Cecil Hare, longtime CBC traffic reporter. And Cecil was like, hey, there's support if you need it. And it was very helpful at that time to talk to me about that, and to understand what was there. And it was the first time in my career that, and I was still relatively new, but he was someone who was a little bit older. I'll stick with a little bit, Cecil, if you're listening, a little bit older, and who gave me some advice on this. And on the reservist side, I gave that example in the beginning of the unhelpful side of things. So now you folks are 20 years in. What's it like talking to the new people in, and how has that conversation changed from when you were in that position?
I think the big thing is just, like I said, offering those supports and making sure they're aware of those supports. It can be difficult for individuals to actually make that phone call or to reach out for that assistance. We have employee assistance programs, all that stuff. And that's one of my concerns, is that I think there is lots of supports out there. It's a matter of trying to find avenues to get people to actually use those resources. Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a major car accident, call the first responder warm line. It could be any little thing, could result in one little hiccup in the road. That if those continue and start building up, and they keep packing that away, that's going to become a bigger issue, right? So it's about resolving those little issues as well, and not just waiting for that one big event that could end someone's career. And that's a big important thing, I think, is just each and every one of us have to look at our mental health. It's not just first responders, important to us, yes, but I think it's everybody needs to look at their own mental health. Look at what supports you have in your life right now. Talking to your family members, your friends. Those things are great, but then there's also professional assistance as well, and I think we should be utilizing those things a lot more than what we currently are today.
Sergeant Benoit?
Certainly a culture shift. It's much more accepted now, and we talk about like a 20-year gap. Yeah. Newer people that are coming into our organization, that's all they've known is acceptance for mental health, mental illness, and resources that are out there. Mm-hmm. So we see a big difference from my first year on the job, when you didn't really want to talk about anything. You were told kind of it was a sign of weakness, to support sessions where people are showing up not necessarily to benefit from it, but to just support others that have showed up.
Yeah.
So a huge shift.
So what do you watch for then for new folks, just as check-ins to make sure they're okay? What are some things that, like, whether it's you're not seeing it in advice, or if there's something like, hey, let's have a chat?
Well, right now for us, I know on our side, we've only recently, since again we've got a clinical director now, we do mandatory check-ins. Right. Which of course is a stop in for a chat. It doesn't single anybody out. Everyone goes through it, myself included. And basically just that, to have a chat. A lot of it comes down, again, I can't stress enough, the education is key. Having people, I guess, perform self-care is a big thing. Yeah. Just knowing, to avoid any kind of burnout. You look at resiliency training to make sure that, they can understand, I guess, what their stressors are and how to kind of combat those. Yeah. But over and above that, again, self-care, just knowing that there's a work-home life balance, and, no one knows you like you. So listen to your mind, listen to your body. And, if it gets to the point where you're no longer at your base, then you should reach out.
Chief Antle, thoughts from yourself on this when you look at young, new volunteer firefighters, firefighters who are full-time? What do you kind of talk to them about or look for when after that first fire for them?
well, the check-in is very, very important. That actually works, and it doesn't have to be because somebody's looking for help.
No.
I think, doing that just says to people, yeah, you know what, I might have been thinking a few things, but that was okay because, hey, the chief is too. That's one thing I really like about doing check-ins with people. The younger people coming in today are a lot smarter than we were. They have an acceptance of the fact that you can be mentally injured. They seem to have a much better acceptance of that than we did when we started.
That's always a wild thing to kind of I realize that here too at work sometimes. I'm like, oh, you're way better equipped than when I was young. Oh my gosh, and you've got such a great understanding around this. I mean, that is, and I'll let you continue, sorry, Chief, but that's such an encouraging thing to hear.
Yeah, like it's great to see that they're caring about each other without me telling them they should be caring about each other. And I've gone up to some of my newer firefighters after an incident and said, what do you think? And their concern goes to me. Oh, well, I didn't see anything but a boy. I was thinking about you. I mean, how are you? And that conversation doesn't have to be forced. Just doesn't have to be forced anymore. We also try to make a debriefing, not mandatory, maybe that's the wrong word, but encouraged very strongly. And getting the young people in there for the first couple of times can be a little challenging, but when you do get them in there, be the one that opens up. You're not there. Don't let them sit there thinking, okay, he expects me now to do this. I'm not comfortable doing that because what's he going to think of me if I do? Be the leader. Be the one that says, man, this was hard. And this continues to get, every time I see this, it breaks my heart. Put it out there. Let them know that, hey, you're not being signaled out because you're young or because you're new or because this is the first time you've seen it. There's no one getting, doing that. We're here as a group. And our leaders are feeling the same thing I'm feeling.
Also on the line right now, we've got another fire chief, Vince MacKenzie, Fire Chief, Grand Falls-Windsor, President, Maritime Fire Chiefs Association. Chief MacKenzie, thank you for coming back on the show. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
I wanted to get back in touch with you too. I mean, you were on the other week, we were talking about wildfires, and then when we were planning the show on mental health today, we've got Chief Antle on, and then we thought we'd get back in touch. I just also wanted your perspective on mental well-being for firefighters from, under your chief's hat, and what you think about when it comes to keeping folks mentally healthy who are on the front lines.
Yeah, well, just the comments there about Chief Antle are definitely correct. And I think over the past, I'd say 4 or 5 years for sure, the awareness around mental health and the trauma associated with sometimes being a first responder is important. I see the erasing of the stigma of when someone has a difficult time with an emergency scene, but also to Duane's point about the check-ins, our department, we've embraced this type of procedure for the last 20 years, or actually probably closer to 30 years now. We were early in the game. And in our department, for example, it's a matter of procedure. Just as much as it is cleaning up the equipment when we come back from a call. The first thing we'll do is look after our crew. We actually bring the crew into the room. We'll have a little, we call it sometimes a diffusing or just a little debriefing, just not so much a formal thing, but just check in with each other. And that is a matter of procedure for our department. And I say that because it was just this past Friday, actually, we had an incident here where we, again, had to bring our crew in after we dealt with a tragic accident. And at that point, we also had 4 people who were brand new to our department. And if nothing else, for the matter of learning that this is acceptable, This is procedure. This is what we experience in our profession, and this is how we look after each other. And not only that, but it goes further than that. You can expect somebody to phone you tomorrow and check in with you personally, so it don't have to be in a group setting either, and that was done on Saturday. And then if any of our emergency responders are having issues or one of their peer support people, because you usually a peer, somebody who was actually on the scene or in the department with you, if they feel that the person may need an extra check-in or whatever, it's just our way of looking after each other. And they would certainly inform me, or they would inform somebody else in the group, whoever they're comfortable with, that we will proceed further with supports. We also have an EAP program that's sponsored by, or that's paid for by the town. And so we have a 1-800 number that we can call. There's the warm line as well in Newfoundland and Labrador as well. So there's plenty of supports. And I think, to the most part, this is very preventative. It's proactive, and it's not reactive. When one of our firefighters has an issue, we kind of get ahead of the game. And at least then it gives the firefighter an effort or an avenue to be able to deal with whatever issues they've witnessed at an emergency scene, because, it's not easy. Nobody likes this stuff. And especially in small communities, many times we arrive on these incident scenes, and it's not a stranger. It's probably somebody in that crew will know somebody who is either related or that to that person. So that makes that call even more serious, I guess, in our own minds, or more traumatizing to the firefighter.
Chief Vince MacKenzie, I, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, Fire Chief Vince MacKenzie there. We're getting down there, folks. Just a little whip around final thoughts. Rodney, final thought from you today, just on, however you want to wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, like what's been mentioned already, I mean, obviously thoughts going out to everyone out in CBN area fighting the forest fires out there, all the families and people affected by that. We have paramedics that are working in there constantly, still in the area to help support. So we're always thinking about our members there as well. And, like I said before, I mean, mental health should be something that each and every one of us looks at and takes care of, not just whenever there is one of these big events, but, all throughout the year, every year kind of thing. So, because there's always going to be, another big event that could come up down the road. We're talking earlier about the hurricane is coming our way kind of thing at the moment. So, we're always just one big event away from the next big event as well. So,
yeah. We wait. Luckily, this one looks like it's passing south, but fingers crossed, and we'll keep tracking it. Ed, final thoughts? Sergeant Benoit?
Much the same. Hats off to all those that are involved in the ongoing suppression efforts. I mean, a lot of hours logged there. No doubt we will get through this. At the end of the day, we're all on the same team. The more discussion that we have about this stuff, the better for everybody.
Sarah White, any thoughts from whatever you want to say, or to talk a bit more about the last thoughts on the warm line for the day?
Absolutely. Mostly just to remind folks that we are here. It's 365 days a year, 7 days a week. The First Responders Warm Line is from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. And first responders are anybody who is the first at a scene. It doesn't necessarily have to be a professional title, but of course we are here for all folks. If you are a first aider and you do first aid on someone, you are welcome to call. If you've acted on a scene of a car crash or anything, please reach out and talk to somebody who has been there and who can help you with that. And additionally, if you are looking for more resources and more supports, then they'll be able to help you with that as well. So a reminder that number is 709-237-4180. And for the families, caregivers, anybody else who's out there who may be struggling with additional anxiety during this time, we've gotten a lot more calls to our provincial warm line lately as well, with people concerned about the evacuation alerts and just a lot of curiosity and concern, and especially those families in the CBN area. You're always welcome to call our provincial warm lines, also open 365 days a year, 7 days a week, from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., and that number is 709-753-2560.
All right. Duane Antle, literally 10 seconds for a final thought. Oh, hi, Chief. You still there?
Great to have these open conversations. to the folks who have put all their time into making this available to us, awesome. Thank you so much. And you know what? Never be afraid to reach out for help.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Chief. Thanks, folks. That is it for the show today. Tomorrow we are in Carbonear, and we're talking to folks in there impacted by wildfires. Thank you. Cheers.